Welcome to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad, the podcast that prepares you for one of life's toughest yet inevitable moments, stepping in when your parents need you most. Hosted by Spade, a senior real estate specialist with Keller Williams Realty. We'll dive deep into more than just moving. We're talking smart financial planning, making tough decisions with confidence, and strategies to avoid being caught in crisis mode. Join us for real stories, expert insights, and actionable steps to stay ahead of the curve. Now, here's your host, Spade.
Welcome back to Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad, the podcast where we help Gen Xers navigate the journey of helping our aging parents from downsizing to finding the right senior living options and everything in between. I'm your host, Spade with Keller Williams Realty right here in San Diego. And today I'm excited to introduce to you Karina Rios. She is the residential outreach specialist with St. Paul Senior Services. Now, St. Paul's is one of San Diego's most trusted names when it comes to senior living, offering a range of communities and care options for every stage of life. So if you've been wondering how to even start the process of choosing the right senior community, or what you should be looking for beyond the brochures and the tours, you're going to want to stick around for this conversation. So let's get to it. Karina, how are you? Thank you for being on Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing really well today, so thank you.
Awesome. So let's just kind of start. Let's talk about St. Paul's because you guys have different communities around San Diego. And then let's just we'll transition into, let's say St. Paul's is full. What do people look for? So tell me, can you give me a quick overview of the different types of communities and services St. Paul's offers our seniors here in San Diego?
Absolutely. So we have 3 different communities in Bankers Hill. We have our manor on Bankers Hill, and that is independent active retirement. Within the same area, we also have the villa, which is assisted living and memory care. And if someone needs extra help for any medical need, we have our skilled nursing facility right next to the manor on Bankers Hill.
Awesome. So what makes St. Paul different from other senior living options here in the San Diego area?
I think the nice thing about St. Paul's is because we offer such a wide range of different services when it comes to senior care. So for example, we have our independent living, which is very different from assisted living and memory care. But because it's St. Paul's as a whole, if someone needs that additional care, they can easily make that transition to the different communities. So I'd say that's probably the main difference, that transition is a lot easier.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's one of the things that I have told some of my clients about. Look for places that is an easy transition from independent to assisted or assisted to memory care, however that works out. So I noticed you offer the PACE program, and that is a program of all-inclusive care for elderly. Can you explain what PACE is and who would be a good fit for it?
Absolutely. So our PACE program is specific to those that are 55 and up on Medi-Cal. So in order to qualify for the program, it is completely free. If they have Medi-Cal, but also if they have a chronic condition that's ongoing. It could be anything from diabetes to high blood pressure, but it's someone that wants to continue living independently at home, but that needs a little extra care that they're unable to receive independently. So the main goal of PACE is to remain at home as long as possible, as safely as possible, with different care. So for example, the PACE program, it's a center where everything is included. So that comes from dental to optometry, physical therapy, occupational therapy. And the nice thing too is that there's a dietary team as well as social workers that are constantly reviewing cases and staying on top of the seniors' care.
That is really cool. So and I do see your vans driving all around the city.
They're
see them
everywhere.
I know, especially since I went to go visit you all. I was telling you that I was, my office used to be right next door to the villas right next to the Barcelona. And yeah, and now it's like I just can't go anywhere without seeing the pace vans everywhere. That's cool. Now I know exactly what that's for. So can a resident, well, you kind of went over this, a transition between the different levels of care within St. Paul's, and like how does that need get determined? Like, for example, if somebody's independent going into assisted, like how does that work?
So the nice thing is because St. Paul's has those different care levels within the community. The nice thing is that the staff communicates really well with one another. So our sales team at the manor can go ahead and make that referral to the villa. And because it's within the same company, they can make that transition really easily by providing the paperwork and everything that's necessary. It's a little different, if someone is transitioning from an independent community to a completely different company, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're within St. Paul's, it's a lot easier. It's kind of hard to explain.
Mm-hmm.
But I think because there's that communication there, it makes it pretty effortless.
So if someone's going from the manors to the villas, it's still the resident or the family's responsibility to get that move to happen, correct? Or does St. Paul's help with that, or how does that work?
Unfortunately, we would not be able to facilitate that move, but we can provide resources and as well as creating that communication line between the two communities.
Okay, yeah. So we would then want to think about bringing in a senior move manager to make that move from like the manors to the villas, or however we wanted to work that. Okay, well that's reasonable because we just had on our senior move manager, so that works out perfectly. Yeah, no, and it's nice because if they're already in the manors, then they're in a smaller place anyway, versus having to really downsize that big home. That's already been done, and now they're just transitioning into the next one. So how does St. Paul's approach memory care differently compared to other communities?
So our memory care at the villa, they have a model. So our model is called the Reflections Program, and that has 4 pillars of care, and it's compassionate transitioning, right? So it could be anywhere from assisted living to memory care, or if someone goes from independent to memory care, there's that effortless transition there. Family engagement is a huge one as well as providing the high quality caregiver standards and specialized social enrichment. And honestly, the huge difference that I've seen working from different senior communities is our staff is very compassionate and understanding and very attentive to our residents too.
I noticed that when I was over there and getting a tour that we went on the memory care floor and everybody was just like so kind and so, and then I also learned that, a resident's loved one, especially at the villas, can visit anytime they want. Yeah, they're 24 hours, right?
Yes, we are 24 hours. And then the family can come in, throughout the day. And they can also, something that I think is great about the villa is our families are extremely engaged with not just their own family member, but different residents as well. So you'll see a family member come in and greet all the residents like in the group. And it's really great to see. It's something that I think we really do like cater to.
That's awesome. And I also learned that you all are pet friendly for those that are living in the villas, in the assisted living, that you're pet friendly. That I learned that too, which I thought was awesome because there was a dog walking in there and I was like, oh, that's not something you see every day.
I know. And same thing with the manor too. We're also very pet friendly. There's a lot of residents that have a cat or a dog. And I think that's pretty vital when it comes to moving into a senior community. Not a lot of them are pet friendly. So that's the nice thing about St. Paul's.
That's really cool. Yeah, I did not know that about the community. So let's talk someone considering independent living for just a second. What are some of the amenities and activities offered at St. Paul's that help seniors that are active and connected? Like what's available?
There's a lot. There's a lot. So at the Manor, we have a pretty wide range of activities throughout the day, including the weekends. We have anything from like outside outings to, you know, resident led activities as well, which is something that not a lot of communities offer from what I've seen. As well as if someone does decide to move in, there is, the housekeeping that's twice a month. That's something that not too many communities offer, especially for independent.
Mhm. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about healthcare because one of the things that I learned is you all have CNAs on staff. Um, and so, what kind of healthcare support are available to residents, and how does St. Paul coordinate the care for residents who need additional medical services? Because I met some of the CNAs over there, very very lovely people. And so, yeah, let's talk a little bit about that because some older adults might, may not have memory issues, but they might forget to take their pills or not take them on time, or what does that look like?
So at the villa, we actually do offer like 3 levels of care. So when someone does decide to move in, that's something that our nursing team would go ahead and assess depending on what exactly they need. And that can change. That can always change from the time they decide to move in to maybe a year or two down the road, whether they require more care or less care. That's something that can always be kind of configured, which is really nice too. And so with the villa, they do offer diabetic care. That's something that not too many communities offer, which is
Mhm.
really nice. There's the 24-hour nursing staff, there's housekeeping, there's the weekly linen service. And then there's also like escort services if someone's requiring like an outside appointment and
Right.
they're unable to know where their doctor's appointment is. We offer that as well.
Let's kind of switch gears just a little bit. Does St. Paul offer any services or support for families, residents, such as caregiver support or family education? Because one of the things that I find is that there are so many people, adult children, who just don't know where to start and they just need some answers. And maybe they just need, um, I don't know, we talked to a therapist. We had a therapist on the podcast. Is there any sort of support that they can tap into as they're doing their research on communities?
Absolutely. So the nice thing about San Diego County is there's so many resources, and also our staff, our admission staff is pretty well knowledged in the different resources that there are. So if someone's just coming into the community, thinking about it, but they're not exactly ready to make that transition just yet,
Hmm.
our staff can go ahead and help them with that. Unfortunately, we don't offer support groups or anything at the moment, but we are in partnership with Alzheimer's Association and the Caregiver Coalition, so we can go ahead and
Okay.
provide those resources for that.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the Caregiver Coalition, and like you said, the San Diego County has a lot of services, and I believe it's 311 that they can call and get just a myriad of different types of services. That I was surprised what the county actually offers. So that's a resource to go to as well, right?
And it's great too, because I feel like at the end of the day, if someone is looking for a community but they're not ready, I mean, being in my role currently, my main goal is to gather all these resources so that if someone comes up to me asking me a very specific question in regards to, caregiving support, which is not something that, we have at the villa
Hmm.
per se for home care, but because I'm out in the community and I'm learning about all these resources, I'm also a tool of letting them know this is who you can call.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's helpful because people need that right now because they just don't know. So one thing I hear a lot from families is that they don't even know what questions to ask when looking for a senior community because that's huge. There's so many. So let's talk about that. So when families are beginning their search for a senior community, what are the first 3 things you recommend that they focus on?
Oh, there's a lot of different things to focus on, but definitely the top main 3 would be location. your price range, and then what kind of needs are needed. So,
Mhm.
for example, figuring out, do you want the senior to live closer to their family, or is there a specific location the senior has always wanted to live in? Searching that specific maybe zip code or anywhere in that like range, and
Mhm.
then figuring out what the price range is from very minimal of how much someone is willing to spend to the optimal without struggling,
Mhm.
as well as what kind of community is best, whether that's independent, assisted living, memory care.
Mhm. I think, well, one of the biggest fears seniors have about this process of going into a community is, you touched on it, finances. What if I outlive my finances? That's a big deal for a lot of people. And one thing I think is interesting about St. Paul's is that you're all nonprofit, and your community fee, I think people are kind of surprised that a community fee is just kind of like it's kind of used to get the room ready or the place ready, and some community fees, I mean, are $8,000, $9,000, but your community fee is $1,000 to get the room ready, which I thought when Terry, who gave me my tour, told me that. I was like, wait, are you serious? It's only $1,000? And she was like, yep, it's just $1,000, because other ones are much more expensive, right?
Right. And with our manor, the community fee is 1,200.
Mm-hmm.
But the nice thing about that too is another great thing is seeing if there's any specials going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
If anyone has any move-in specials. So sometimes different communities will offer 1 month free or community fees waived. So
Mm-hmm.
that's another important thing to look into. For example, with St. Paul's, we do waive that community fee for veterans.
For veterans, okay. Yeah, that's good. That's good to know. I did not know that. See, I learned something every time I do one of these podcasts. It's awesome. So let's talk about some really important questions that a family should ask during a tour or an interview with a senior living community, because I know that when I was there getting my tour with Terry, and I had my list of questions, but then I get in the car and I have a list of more questions, right? So what are some of those questions that you think are the most important, and the questions that keep coming up that people think about after the fact and they're like, oh, I forgot to ask this. What is that?
I think a lot of questions that we ask or that we receive is what comes included with the rent.
Hmm.
Because you can come in saying, okay, this is the exact price it's going to be every month, but not really knowing what's included within it.
Hmm.
That's a fantastic question to ask. And then also kind of making that comparison of what does the senior need and enjoy, and do those activities align with that?
Hmm. I think one of the important things that, or one of the things that I really like, well, first of all, um, let's just backtrack for one quick second and talk about the food, because the food I saw the menus, okay, and then we went into the dining room and I was like, it smells like a top quality restaurant in here. So you guys are very proud of that, right? Like
Oh,
you are.
absolutely.
Yeah, and you get options. And what I was learning was is that there's two or three options, for your meals. And then I said to Terry, I go, what if they don't want that? And she goes, oh, they can pretty much just get whatever they want, and you'll make it, right? Like the
Yes.
food is something that I think is one thing that people want the most, is the food. So you guys are balancing out nutrition there, and you're making it so that way they want to be down there, right?
Right. And then another thing I forgot to mention too is when it comes to questions is if a senior has any dietary limitations, can the community accommodate those needs? That's
Mm-hmm.
a huge one because someone can move in thinking, yes, they can accommodate these, but later finding out that's not exactly the case.
Yeah.
That's a really important thing to consider as well.
Awesome. And then and also like at the villas, what I thought was really cool is you all have a beauty shop on site. So that way you don't have to go out and you don't have to take, 50 people somewhere. They just go downstairs, right? I mean, there's an extra charge for that, but they just go right downstairs.
Right. And the nice thing too is that we offer that with the manor as well.
That's awesome. And
So
the
both
other thing,
communities.
yeah, and the other thing that I really liked is that every single day there's activities. You've got like there's a list of everything that's done that day, and you guys go out on Target runs and Ralph's runs and all kinds of stuff. I mean, like, I, I, I mean, it seems like a pretty good thing, right? Yeah. Um, so let's talk about how can families assess if a senior community is truly the right fit for their loved ones just beyond the tour, the brochure. Like they might go in and think, okay, this is good, the brochures are great, everyone's smiling, but what do they do to just make sure it is the exact right fit?
I think the best way would be getting as engaged as they possibly can. That would be joining in on a meal to see if that's something that the senior actually enjoys. Is the food to their liking? If they can participate in an activity, that would be amazing because that kind of gives them the sense of community and seeing what it would be like to live there on a daily basis. Um, Tours, as much as they can give, it's not as much as it would be if you're asking the resident that lives there. So also, sparking up conversation with a resident that's in the room and asking them those questions of how do you feel about it? Like, what are your negative thoughts about it? Because I'm thinking about moving in and I'm not quite sure yet.
That makes sense. And I think that is really it's really good just kind of like opening up that dialogue because the residents are going to tell you the truth, right?
Oh,
They're not going to
100%.
they're not going to hold back if they don't like it. The one thing that what I liked about St. Paul's too is that you there was a worship space there that respected everybody's faith. So it's non-denominational and any faith, right? I think that that's probably really important as well. And one of the things that people should consider asking, particularly, is will they be welcome with their faith? Because I think that's probably one of the most important things to a lot of people, right?
Right. Faith, and then whether or not they feel comfortable in the community. So being their true self as they possibly can, while still remaining comfortable in their new home.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's important. So, what role does community and culture and social life play when deciding on a senior living community? I mean, are their residents dating each other? Does that happen?
We have in the past. Currently, I'm not too sure if there's anyone dating. Something that I will mention though is because we're all so closely like placed together, we do have residents that have dated within communities. So we've had someone that's living at the manor that's dating someone at the villa, and currently we have a couple that's one is living at the manor and their spouse is living at our skilled nursing facility. So that's really nice. And then also there are events where different communities come together. So our foundations team will go ahead and throw like one event per year where
Okay.
they invite every single different community. And that's the nice thing too is it's not really separated of, oh, it's just the manor that can participate in these activities. it's it's pretty like closely knit, which is really nice too.
That's cool. And so let's talk about finances because that is one of the biggest things that people have a challenge. And I think, some people are like, "Whoa, I didn't expect it was going to be this much." But even home care, right, is quite expensive when you're looking at it. So, are there any financial tips or resources that families can look into when planning for these types of costs?
So I actually asked this question to our sales specialist at the Manor,
Mhm.
who let me know that there is a VA aid and attendance benefit that some can qualify for, but there's like very specific regulations to that, such as like income and their status and how long they've like served in the military, as well as the health of a senior, with different resources. Unfortunately, there's not too much, but there are communities that accept the assisted living waiver. So that's something that's really important to look into. It's a way where a senior can move into a senior community
Mhm.
that someone else may pay full price for, but if they qualify because of their income, they can go ahead and move in at a reduced price.
Okay.
And then with moving into a community, because majority of them are private pay,
Mhm.
long-term care insurance is unfortunately the best way.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's just a reality for what it is. But like I said too, even if someone stayed at home, home care is also, can be quite expensive as well. But the downside to home care is you don't get all those fun people like you do over at the Manor or over at the villas. I mean, like, let's face it, there's a lot of cool people over there and there's a lot to do. It's not just a place to just, you know, sit around and do nothing.
And the nice thing too is I know a lot of individuals don't want to move into a community because they're not ready. It's not something they're willing to do. They've lived in their home for several years, and making that transition is really heavy because sometimes in order to pay for senior communities, one has to sell their home. And that's something that someone's not really able to do. So that's why someone may do, home care. But in that regard, it's really important that someone go over their finances to see how much they're spending, whether it is cheaper to move into a community or remain at home with all these extra services that they're providing or receiving.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
home care is expensive.
Hmm.
There's a wide range in pricing and lots of resources in regards to that. But with each home care service, it's a really heavy price, unfortunately.
Yeah, no,
And
it can add up quick. And if it's got to go from home care to home health care, then it even gets more expensive. And so when you look at the cost between like having someone in home health care, right? Like they have to have a healthcare provider coming in, a nurse. That is the cost of going into a community is probably going to be less than it would be to stay at home, right? Because then we're talking potential modifications to the property as well. So that's the other thing.
right,
Yeah.
right. There's the ramp installation. There's the walk-in shower, or hiring someone to assist with those showers.
Yeah.
And the nice thing about moving into a community is you have that staff that's readily available. You
Yeah.
don't have to receive the care if you're not ready for it. Like, for example, at the villa, there's those 3 level of cares.
Hmm.
You can come in at a level 1 and later transition to level 3 or whichever.
Hmm.
But the nice thing is that the support is there when it's needed. And when someone is at home, sometimes it's a little too late and they need that extra care. So they jump from minimal care to extreme care, which
Hmm.
is when you'll see that huge difference in price as well.
Yeah. And sometimes that happens because that's just life, right? And it just is what it is. Is there anything that you would like to share that I didn't ask you that may have be sitting right in the top of your brain or on the tip of your tongue that I hadn't that you didn't have a chance to answer?
So something when it comes to finding the right community for you,
Uh-huh.
there's different communities that offer different types of care. So for example, with St. Paul's, we don't have that buy-in option, but there are different communities where they have that aging in place but it's a buy-in. So that can
Right.
be anywhere from 189,000, but you receive that care as you need it,
Mm-hmm.
to with St. Paul's, it's not that initial extra heavy fund. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of as it progresses.
Yeah.
And the nice thing too about our community is because we are constantly in the community with the residents, we're able to kind of navigate and realize if someone is not doing well, if we notice, different behavior changes, because there's a huge team surrounding that resident, because the staff is constantly around the residents and we notice those behavioral changes, we can go ahead and address those needs immediately. The nice thing about our community is we do have a resident services coordinator, and our director of nursing is constantly in communication with the physician. The CNAs are able to let the director of nursing know, or the charge nurses, since we do have charge nurses on every single shift for both memory care and our assisted living, which is really nice because we're able to provide that one-on-one care really nicely. And our ratio from CNAs to resident is very low because we're able to have those charge nurses available.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Karina, I want to thank you for being on Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad and giving us a clear picture of what families should be thinking about when it comes to senior living and senior living options. And for all of you listening, just remember, you don't have to figure this out all by yourself. Whether you are helping your parents downsize, sell a home, or choose the right senior community, there's help out there and people like Karina who really get it. So thank you so much. I'll drop St. Paul's info in the show notes so you can check it out. Thank you so much for spending a little time with me today on Moving Mom and Downsizing Dad. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.